All right, thanks, guys. So welcome to this webinar. So today we're going to speak about Commcare, as Mirai mentioned. So first of all, in order to run through our presentation here, we're going to have a use case, typical use case, that you can find in many organizations. So imagine that you are tasked to run a pre-vaccination census in order to determine the target population for a vaccination activity. So basically, let's say you have a team of surveyors that go home to home, and they will go out in the field and collect information about the households and the people that live in these households. And let's say that the vaccination happens at a later stage in time. So if we think about this, we can like define a couple of workflows, simple workflows to perform the data collection. So in order to perform the census, you will have to register the household, and then for each person of the household, also register that person, and then for each person. So each time you have a person, go back here and like loop through all the people that live in this household and get all the information you need from them in order to perform your census. So this is a fairly simple process. And now, if we were to do the vaccination activity, then you would go back to the households that you had surveyed, and then you would use your mobile app to search for the household, and then search for a person in that household. Then register the fact that you vaccinated that person, and then for each person, go back to the search and perform this until you have vaccinated everyone eligible in that household. So these are two quite simple workflows that we're going to demo today. And then, as we're also speaking of data, obviously, we can define and start thinking about a data model here. So here we have basically two things. We're going to be two models, or two things we're going to be tracking. The first one is the household, where we'll collect information about the address of the services available at the household, and then information about the persons that live there. So we'll collect information regarding their identification, vaccination status, and then our health data. So here, as a very simple model, we'll have like a relationship between household and person, where like one household can have many persons, but one person lives only in one household. So again, a very simple data model, but anyways, that's the use case for today. So we're gonna be using the tool called Commcare to do this. This tool developed by the software company called Dimagi. Encourage you guys to look them up and see what else they do, and in more details on the products they offer. Commcare is an open source tool, so you can obviously download it yourself and run it yourself, although we're going to speak about this a bit more in detail at the end of the presentation. Today we're going to focus on one specific feature that the Commcare platform allows you to do. It's called case management. So this is really related to data model that I showed you just a few seconds ago. Basically, what we call case management, we mean that we can track things over time. So things can be many different things. Actually, it can be anything you want, from households, people, farm, school, a hospital, or anything else actually that you want. In Commcare terminology, a thing will be called a case, right? So when I say a case, just think about like a household or a person or a farm in this case, for this presentation, right? So the way this works in Commcare is actually fairly simple. You collect data about a case with forms. If you're familiar with any other like data collection tools, such as ODK, Cobol Toolbox, same principle. You have forms that collect data. The big difference here is that you can define what are the, let's say, properties that define your case, and the data that you collect on your case is persistent on your phone, which means that you can have all this information at all times on your phone. So we'll see this in a moment. So we'll speak of, I'm going to use a few terms here. I just want to make sure to clarify it from the get-go. So as I said, case management is the ability to track things over time. Then a case is one of the things you want to track over time. Then we have the term case property. That means that we're going to have like, it's going to be one of the pieces of information about a case. So for example, about a person, it would be like the name, the age, date of birth, for example. Then you'll see in the application, we have what we call a case list, which is basically a list of all the cases or things you're tracking. And then another screen that will show you the case details, which basically is all the properties and the values of the case properties for that case. And then again, going back to the data model, we have what we call the relationship between the household and the person. So here we have the the feature of child cases, which I'll show you also in a minute. So for this demonstration, we're going to do 4 steps. First step is going to demo quickly how the app works on this vaccination census app, and then I'll show you how this app is built, and finally I'll show you how you can get the data into Power BI. I'm sure you're familiar with Power BI. It's Microsoft Business Intelligence tool that is freely available, actually, so quite powerful. So I really encourage you guys to check it out. And if I have a bit more time, I'll show you more cool stuff that you can do with Commcare. So I'm going to go back just a few slides back. So we have this, and on the right side of the screen, you'll see the app. So how does this app work? I think you'll find something very familiar here, like a login screen where you can, input your username and your password. So here I go. Then you end up in this very simple screen where you can basically sync data with the server, log out, or start, your data collection. So here, like, also a nice logo. Well, nice, I'm not sure, but like, you have a little logo here that we've designed. And then you're presented with different options as you start. And here I have only one option, the list of households. So here I'm going to click here quickly. And here you can see what we've called the case list. So a list of cases, in this case, a list of households. So you can see different information, different case properties for this household. Here you can also, for example, like search for a household if you want with a little like magnifier. So if I type Tableau, you can see how the search highlights the results. So it's cool. So it allows you to identify, which result has, let's say, most matching characters to your search. Once you've identified the household you want to go for, then you can just click in it. Then you get into what we've called the case details view, which is basically all the all the properties of that case. So here you can see we have different tabs, and in each tab a bunch of fields, a bunch of case properties displayed. So here we're displaying all the properties for this household, and they're not neatly organized in these different tabs. So once you review these, you've confirmed this is the right household you want to go for, then you can continue. Then you get a list of options. So here we can do 3 different things. You can update your household details. You can also add people to this household if you have, for example, forgotten to register someone. And you can also see the household members, so the people you've already registered and live in this household. So here, if I click on this list of households, you can see the different people. So here, the same sort of like, let's say, organization. You have the list of cases. This time, these are not households, but are people, and these are the people attached to the household we just selected before. Same principle, list. Then you have different types of fields. Here, the cool thing is that you can use also icons and to display information. So here, for example, you see that the sex of the person and the vaccination status of that person. And if you select one person, you also have the different properties that get displayed. So all the case properties also neatly organized in different tabs that you can configure, right? So, so yeah, I'm reviewing this person, Diego. That's the person I want. So I continue, and then I have a bunch of options here to update the person's details and to register health data, for example. If I go back a few menus, I can select someone else, and you can see Gabriela here has also a bunch of options here. You can see there's one more option regarding vaccination. So we'll get to this in a minute. So this is basically our app, right? In terms of like data that's in there. So I'm going to go all the way back. I'm going to show you how data collection is performed. So I'm going to start with household, right? So I'm going to take the phone quickly. So I assume here I'm looking for a house. It's not in my list. So I'm going to register a new one. I'm going to click the register new household button. And then here again, I have a list of villages I can choose from. So I'm going to choose Pensa. Then I'm going to, let's say, write address complement Orange House. Oops. Then you get another list of type of housing. So here, let's say shared house. So see that entry is fairly simple. You can also select internet and type of services. So here's like a multi-choice question. And here, if I select internet, then you get this other question regarding what type of internet you get. So it's your Wi-Fi, but if you go back here and you select internet, then you skip that question, right? So just for the sake of data entry, we're going to keep it. Excuse me. So then date fields here. So when did you move in? Let's say like a couple months back. All right. And then I'm going to ask me how many people live in this place. So here, let's say 3 persons live here. So what I'm going to do here at the same time that I'm actually registering the household, I can also register the people who live in there, right? So let's say I'm going to register Pierre. Pierre is, let's say, the father of the household. So I'm going to say, okay, some date of birth back way back when. And then I'm going to go for the next person here. You can see the little number updating up there. So now I'm going to register the mother, Paul, oops, the caps. Let's say that's Paul, that's the mother of the household. And then we have a third person here, which will be the child, Jacques. So let's say Jacques is only 2 years old or so. All right, that's a male. Okay, so now we've got all the different people. So I've got just a quick, let's say, final like ending label that tells me like how many people have registered, and also an ID code, that's an ID that's been generated for the household in case you want to have like specific identification means for that household. So then I finish. So once I'm done, I'm directly in my household. I can see all the different options here. So if I go to the list of household members, then I see what I've just inputted here. So it's Jacques Pierre, different sex, different vaccination status. So let's get into one of them. So for example, let's go to Jacques. Here we have the details, not vaccinated, no health data yet. Oops, sorry, I'm doing it quick, a little too fast. So here, same options as you saw before. I'm going to try to register the vaccination for that person. And here you can see, okay, this person is 2 years old and the vaccination is not possible. It's only possible for people above 18 years old. So here I can't proceed, you see, have to exit the form to continue. So basically the cool thing here you see is that we have like age computed, you have, and then like some validation conditions that can be put in there. So I'm going to exit the form, and then I'm going to go for, well, for example, here, I can review her details if I need to. Then I'm going to try to vaccinate her, register her vaccination. So here, different situation. I'm about to vaccinate Paul. She's 44 years old and she lives in Penza Orange House. So here you can display also information about the household associated with that person, which is a nice feature to have. Is Paul pregnant? Let's say yes. And then I'm going to say second trimester. And then the date of vaccination. So let's say she was vaccinated yesterday, or let's say we're doing it right away on the spot. So there we go. What type of vaccine? So this seems to be like a COVID vaccine apparently. So you can choose which type, and then press exit. So now you see Paul has check mark here that she's been vaccinated. And then if you open her details, and you can see that she's been vaccinated, the date and what type of vaccine she's received. So all the stuff, all the case properties, get populated. Stay on the phone, and you can browse them easily. And input your data. So that's basically it for this app. That's what it does. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to now show you how this all works in Commcare. How do we build this app? So I'm going to spend a few minutes in there. So this is what we call, this is the web platform of Commcare. This is where you build your apps. It's all web-based. And you can see here on the left-hand side, you have a menu where you can see kind of the same organization that you saw in the app, the same navigation. So you have like the different menus that you saw, the different forms, everything is in there. It's organized the same way that you saw it. So I'm going to start by showing you how the form builder, which is the tool that you use mostly to build the application. So here you can see all the different questions that I've completed. So you have, standard question types here, like the same you would find in any tool. You have a couple of nice ones, for signature, GPS, passwords, all that kind of stuff. Everything's in there like very standard, but at the same time, very complete. You have, as you see, all types of questions, single select, multi-select. And for single select here, you have this option to load answers, for example, for the type of housing from what we call a lookup table. So you can define this separately, like let's say in a table, a bit like a spreadsheet, and then you will just like pull up the options and populate this here. So it's easy for maintenance. For example, you have the Wi-Fi question. And here, what I wanted to show you in particular is that, obviously you can put validations regarding the fields that you have. So here you have validation conditions, you have like display conditions if you want to as well. So for example, here for the Wi-Fi, for the internet question, you have a display condition based on the services question here. So if we've selected internet, then this question will show up. And the nice thing about this form actually is that not only records fields for the household, it also records field for the persons as you saw. So here you have, for each member of the household, the name, date of birth, sex, etc. So nice thing here is that you can do two things at the same time. So the data workflow is actually quite, let's say, quite simple and quite straightforward. So now that we've got the form that we've set all the case properties we want to save, then how do we actually do that in Commcare? So I have this little link here called case manage case. And then you get into the actual case management feature of Commcare, which allows you to select each form question and then specify how do you want to translate this into a case property. So you select the questions that you want from your form, and then you say, okay, I want to say this is a case property and this is the name of my property, right? So you do this for the household, right? So here you can see all the household questions. But also in the same form, as I said, as you saw, you have the ability to create, other types of, cases or other like things you want to track. So here we have what we call the child case. And what this does is basically exactly the same thing as above. You select which properties or which questions you want to convert to properties that will stay on your phone. And at the same time, it also makes the link between, your person case in this specific case and your household case. So now both things are linked. And this is how, for example, when you select the household, you get you get the filtering of the specific members of that household. So that's how case management works. So the other thing I wanted to show you quickly here is how, so here I have my list of households. So how do you, define what gets displayed, right? So in the apps. So in the case list, in the case details. So here you have two menus you can open, and here you can see that you can select which properties you want to display in the list. So I'm going to also explore this little like guy here that you have on the right hand side, which is basically the web equivalent of the app. So you can test your application directly from your browser. You don't have to install it on your phone. You can do it directly. This is a really nice feature that Commcare provides. You can do everything from the mobile. So now I enter my list of households, and as you can see, I have 3 fields, 1, 2, 3. Here I have 1, 2, 3. So village, address, number of persons, and you can see actually that the number of persons is some sort of calculation. So what this tells you is that you can actually count. I don't know if you see, maybe it's a little small, but like you can count, how many child cases or how many persons it's associated with the household, and that will give you dynamically the number of people displayed here. So nice little feature. So now if you select the case here, one of the households, you find the same, let's say, tabs that you have in the app, and the tabs are defined here, right? So here you have it: name, village, etc. Move, time of when they moved in. You have also you can also have different types of fields here. You can have like time since, etc. From your date. And yeah, so very nice way to lay out your information. I'm going to quickly go now to the household members so you can see how this works. Same way, I go back here and I'm going to find, quickly, because time is running. List of households here. Here you have 4 fields. There you go, 4 fields. And here you can see we have icons. So how does the icon work? So here, icon is just a value that we map to an icon. So male is mapped to this icon, female is mapped to this icon, right? So you could also very simply just here click and add a property. I'm going to look for sex, for example, up, and just leave it like as it is. I'm going to save, and here you can see this little red dot. So I'm going to update my app and go back quickly and show you how this gets updated up. just to show you how simple this is to sort of update. Here you go. I'm gonna increase this. So here you see male, female, and this time we have, let's say, the textual value here. So this is Commcare, like very quickly, what you can do in terms of data collection. Next thing I wanted to show you now is how you get to export this to Power BI. So Commcare has a very simple integration called Tableau Power BI integration. They use what's called an OData feed. Basically, the OData feed is a simple way through a link to get access to your data in Power BI. So, and to do this, you basically, I'm going to show you, it's already all configured, but I'm just going to show you how this looks. You just specify, like, I want to create a data export for my cases. You select all the properties of your case that you want to export. So again, super straightforward. Imagine this as being like which columns on my Excel table I want to export. And then once you select those, then Commcare generates a link that you can use in Power BI. So here you have the link, for example, for the person's cases. So you can copy this link, and then I'm going to move to Power BI. So I'm running this in a virtual machine, so maybe a little slow, but here basically when you get into Power BI, so this is a dashboard I'm going to show you in a moment, but here you can enter the OData feed and then just simply paste the URL that you've copied above. So I'm not going to do this now just to make sure we have enough time. Everything is already configured, and I've configured two feeds that you will be able to see here. One feed for the persons that you see here, and one feed for the households, right? And obviously then you can create your dashboards in Power BI. So here you have like very simple dashboard that you can see, number of distribution of internet connection, number of households according to the type of vaccines that were given. And once you have your dashboard done, it's quite simple. It's just for you to go and update and refresh the data. So here I've clicked refresh. You can see it's going to pull data from both of the data sources, and my data is going to get updated. There we go. So now it's pulling the data. So the cool thing here, obviously, is that you can almost real time get information. So here you see it was 6, went to 7. If you remember in the beginning of the presentation, we added someone who got vaccinated, so you can see it. And let's just go back quickly to the app. I'm going to do this real quick. Okay. App crashed, no problem. Let's go in there quickly. I'm going to find someone in my orange house. I'm going to vaccinate that person super quick so you can see it in real time. So Pierre, for example, I'm going to register the vaccination for Pierre super quickly. So let's say you got vaccinated yesterday. Boom, Pfizer, boom. Okay, so now the form has been sent to, you can see the little message of the form sent to the server. So the form gets processed. Then if I push refresh, hopefully we'll see here 8 appear. Yep, I'll give it a second for data to get refreshed. So basically you can run this as many times as you want. Here you go, 8, and you can see all the data updated. So super simple to get your data from Commcare. Cool, so that's Power BI. Obviously you can run super complex queries in Power BI. Here you have only very simple stuff, I didn't spend too much time in there, but you could have you can use all the complexity and all the power of Power BI to run your analysis. So I'm going to go back to the presentation very quickly. We've done the demonstration. So what's special about Commcare, just to maybe end this? So as you see, you have the case management feature. I think this is really one of the most powerful features of Commcare, like a foundational feature that allows you to do very interesting stuff. I'm going to show you if I have a bit of time now, but you can do a lot of super complex logic on the forms, and that's great because that allows you to go to create even medical protocols, for example, and stuff like that. as you saw, the form builder is relatively like easy to use, user friendly. So you can that's where you build your apps. You have the online preview as I showed, so you don't have to exit the web app all in there, and then also Commcare scale. So you can use Commcare for like applications deployed to up to 100,000 users, no problem. I mean, yeah, I mean technology supports it. It has been done a few times in the past, so great on that front as well. You can do a lot of other cool stuff. But before we go there, I want to finish just to make sure I have enough time to talk about the limitations of Commcare. I'm going to go back, I think, to the cool stuff. I think we'll have a bit of time. So basically, 4 big limitations of Commcare. So the first one is duplication. So if you have as you've seen, you can in here, like you have a form to register the household, and then you have a form to update the household. Fortunately, you cannot have the same form. You have to define it twice, which means that if you make modifications to one form, you'll have to do it in the other form as well. That's quite annoying. So this really forces you to think through how you want to organize your data and what kind of forms you want to build. So yeah, it's kind of a pain sometimes when you have very complex forms. You can also, like, there's an option to like copy paste, like you can copy and paste stuff from one form to the other, which is quite helpful, but still like not great from a data management perspective. The other thing here that you have to note is that Commcare is a tool that's more on the expensive side of the bunch. So everything I show you here basically requires like a paid plan if you use the Magis hosted version of Commcare. And obviously, if you're looking to do like let's say just a simple survey, like I wouldn't recommend Commcare, although like you can do plain surveys with Commcare, like perfectly fine, and you can have all the features of the form builder to do that, which is great as well, logic and etc. But might be a little expensive for you if you just want to run a survey. So yeah, and then the other one is because Commcare is a tool that scales like to many hundreds of users. The hosting can be quite complex, so you'll have to go and require the services of other companies that can help you host it. If you don't have like strong IT people in your team that can do server hosting and app hosting, like you'll want to outsource this. So it can be quite tricky. But if you do, then you have access to all the features, and then if you use this organization-wide, then your return will be interesting. But if you otherwise, hosting can be quite complex. And the last point that I think you've seen is Commcare is not a data viz tool. Like, so you won't find you have features to like create some reports. It's all quite basic, I would say. And if you know DHIS2, for example, which is more like one-stop shop app where you have data collection, and then you have these nice dashboards you can create, indicators you can define, all that stuff. It's built for this. Commcare here, like you won't be able to do it. So it's really focused, how can I create the base data collection tool? It's more focused on the collection of data, and then providing integrations, for example, also with DHIS2 and other tools like Tableau or Power BI that I showed you, to sort of like analyze and exploit the data that you have. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 more minutes because I think Commcare is cool and I want to show you more stuff you can do. So very quickly. All right, I'm going to go back in my app. I'm going to show you one cool thing that I think is great if you're looking at building app with context logic. So I'm going to go in, find someone here, for example, a child. I need a child for this one. So Gabriela, okay. Here, Gabriela, I'm going to register the health data for Gabriela. So I added a bunch of questions here, like nothing special. And then here, what I want to show you, let me just quickly do this. Up. I'm going to switch screens for a sec. So here, what you can do is you can actually, now we're going to input the height and the weight of Gabriela. And here, you can actually have like what we call these lookup tables I mentioned before, where you can define like for each age in months, for each sex, what is the mean and the max for the height, for example. So here you have it like 28 months old. You can see 68, 112. That's what you see. That's what you have here. So yeah, sorry, 68, 112 for like a girl. And the same for the height. So you can in there built in the app, where here I'm going to input, for example, so weight, height, or that is, let's say, I don't know, 123. and here it tells me like this is outside of the range, right? So not good. So if I put like it was 68, I put like maybe 70, then we're good. But if I continue here, it'll also put me like an error here regarding the format of the. So you can also have quite complex formatting, and this is the one other thing that I wanted to show you is you can do fairly complex validations also using a lot of the what we call the Commcare functions that allow you to here, for example, have a regular expression for the height where I need to have like, at least two characters, 2 digits, a dot, and then another digit, right? So I have to put something like this for this to work, right? 70.0, that will work. Otherwise, it won't work. So again, quite complex validations here. And you can also obviously combine these with lots of functions. If you look at the Commcare wiki, quite extensive as well, you'll find that, for example, here I want to generate an ID, I have this function UUID, and then use the concat function here to concat, 2 bunches of 4 characters with the dash. So cool stuff here. One more thing that you can do with Commcare that's actually nice, since you have here like kind of a web data entry thing, you can also have it actually a proper web data entry thing. Here are my apps, and I can just go and you have like specific like users that can access the app from the web, and they will just see exactly what you see, the same thing that you have on the mobile app, and then actually perform data entry as real users, except they do it from the web versus mobile. So this is useful, for example, if you have like people who work on the field, people who work at the office, and sometimes forms are collected on paper, need to do the data entry and that kind of stuff. Or if you have just like a plain workflow that requires data entry from like a desktop, for example. Okay, 1 minute. One last thing I want to show you. So here, for example, you've seen before we actually added a field to our view. I'm going to exit this quickly. Up here, you see. Okay, quickly up. Start. If you remember, like we added a field in the case list in the household. We have the sex here, so we have this new field here that appears, but it's not in my app, as you can see. So how do I actually update this? Super simple. So here it tells me that I have updates that are not published. So I'm going to go and create a new version. And then once this is done, I'm going to release that version. I'm going to kind of publish it. So now if I go back to my app, I can just very quickly go back here, and I have this little menu at the top, update app. It will check for new versions. Do you have one? Yes. Download it. Boom. It's installed already. I'm going to look back in. I'm going to sync with the server. This might take a minute. Okay, this is where things get slow. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to go back to my app. I'm going to look for someone here in the household, and boom, you see it. You have the sex. So updates can get pushed to users super quickly. Okay, that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. And now, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you. I'm gonna go back to the thank you in the slide. There you go.
Thank you, Guillaume, for this very elaborate presentation. There's already quite a few questions which have run in the Q&A window. If you have additional questions, feel free to ask some more. Let's start with a very practical question around Commcare. Guambai informs us that they already have a Commcare platform with over 255 girls registered in a program, but this is only the first phase of the project. Now they're going to a second phase. They'd like to enroll and register new girls into the program. And the question is basically how you can differentiate in Commcare between new and old registrations.
Okay, so I think if you're using the exact same app to do registrations, then you can actually, so let me show you this. You can actually look at, the date at which the girl was registered in Commcare. So when you want to export the data, so I imagine like, okay, the use case I'm assuming here, like you want to export this data to Power BI or to Excel, for example, right? So you can export this, you can create an export, and then you have to make sure that you select. So I'm going to show you here how this works quickly. So let's say person. I'm going to create an export, and then you just have to make sure that you have the field checked that tells you when these okay, open date. So here you go, open date. This is the field you want to have. You want to make sure you have in your export, because that will tell you when you created the case. And then you can see, okay, from this date onwards, that's a new girl. The other option you have is to add to modify your app and to include a hidden field. Okay, so you have this option also to have hidden fields that will be like phase 2, and you can set it to 1 or to 2, for example. And then when you export the data, you have girls who have like the phase property that will be to some value that maybe 2 for phase 2, and then the girls for phase 1 won't have it. So then you can differentiate them like this. So these are the 2 options you have. I would say actually the second option is better from the data standpoint, I would say, to make sure that you have it's easier to manage, I suppose, in your analysis, since you're just like checking the value versus like using dates.
Thank you. Another practical question is from Sam. And the question is it possible to share cases between different programs? For instance, in this vaccination example you showed us, there's a set of households with household members. Could you use the same set of household and household members and transfer it to another program, for instance, to trace malaria?
Yeah, you can. So actually, when you have your Commcare, like let's say space project or domain, the way you want to call it, you have all these apps. All these apps, they share the same cases. So I'll show you quickly if you want. So here, for example, I'm going to create a new case list, and this case list I can call, if I call it like household, all right, then I will see the list of households, right? As simple as that. So for example, here, let me just put the village, address. Let me just say this, and then that will work, I suppose. So you can do that, absolutely. You can share across. The only thing you have to be careful what you modify and when, because obviously you want to make sure that what gets modified in one app versus the other. But that is actually a nice. Sorry, it'll take me a little longer than I expected to do it, but this is actually a nice way for you to have, like, for example, like a supervisor app or like a data collection app, and both apps can share the same cases. In which case, you can like have one app modify them, no problem. Let's see if that works. Case list. Okay. All right. Just move on to the next question. I'll show you this in a sec.
The next question comes from Olivier, and he asks, does the system have an API? Do you think it would be possible to automatically push data to DHIS2 using this API?
Yeah, so actually, I'm not sure I can show you the so there's definitely an API you can use. If you look for it, Commcare API, there's extensive documentation for this. All right, there we go. And the API has a bunch of you can have a API that you can get forms, you can get users, you can get cases, all that stuff, groups, all that stuff. All these are all the endpoints that you can use. I haven't used it extensively, but like it's working, and the API also allows you to have integration with DHIS2. But I haven't used it in a while now, but I know there is an actual like user interface for DHIS2 integration, but I'm not sure this is like a standard feature you can have on your project. You might have to ask DMAGI to actually turn it on for you. Then you can sort of like import org units, because that's a big piece of the integration between DHIS2 and Commcare. Like you have to have you have to match the organizational units. And also you would have to sort of like map case properties to fields in DHIS2 to make sure that one populates the other, and it's a bidirectional integration.
Another question that came up even prior to the webinar by one of the participants was what the benefit is of having Commcare in combination with DHIS2. Maybe this question
it's a
goes
great
together.
question. It's a very standard use case actually, because so as you can DHIS2 has like the DHIS2 tracker that also allows you to track things over time. That's why they call it the tracker, I suppose. But the DHIS2 comes also with a bunch of constraints regarding how you perform data entry. So it's very specific in the way that it's built for like very specific use cases, such as health programs when you have like different phases, etc. So you don't have the flexibility to build an app like this in DHIS2. So if you have like this one in DHIS2, so if you want to have like complex data entry workflows, complex form logic, then DHIS2 is a great. Commcare is a great tool for you. But then if you want to have, for example, your data pushed to DHIS2 because that's a national tool that the government uses, the MOH uses, or that's where your NGO, for example, like sort of centralizes data about their beneficiaries, and you can actually do that with Commcare, like in the integration. So this is how you get the best of both worlds. I would say that the drawback here is that maintaining that integration can be some work. Example, like if you add a field in Commcare or you remove a field in Commcare, then you have to make sure that this doesn't affect, let's say the integration you've configured to DHIS2. If you add a field, make sure you plug that field to DHIS2. If you remove it, make sure there's no graph in DHIS2 that is reliant dependent on that field. So that will be just the maintenance. So if you have like a large, always be some maintenance to do there. So that's when you want to have like Commcare and DHIS2. Also, if you have that, you have great data collection, and then you have the visualization in DHIS2. So again, that would be a great use case.
All right. The next question is again a double question on the Power BI dashboards. One person in the chat wonders if you can go over again how the Power BI dashboard was created. Now, this webinar, we used a predefined set as a dashboard. So maybe you can go quickly how this can be adapted or how easy it is to add data to the dashboards. And the second question that came with it is whether now you projected data on a program level, whether Power BI can just as easily be used to project data on a national level. I think these two questions can go together.
Yeah. So Power BI is a very it's a very simple tool, right? So like there's I mean, I'm not an expert in Power BI, to be honest, but like if you want to have like the let's say the number of distribution of people by sex, for example, you just like create a new chart here, and then you select, okay, I want where's sex here, and then you want sex as values, right? And then male, female, then you will have your chart here. So it's really as simple as that, right? To create a chart in DHIS2. You can do many more things. You can, and honestly, like we'll quickly touch to my limits to DHIS2 here to Power BI. But here, for example, you can see all types of charts, like numbers. So here, like you define you count like so you can count the number of people, select only the ones that have been vaccinated here, and show this number. And then so you have also the ability, but this honestly, like when we do like a next series of this webinar, like when we do a next webinar in the series, we can show you how to add columns here. So you can edit the query here somehow and add columns to the to Power BI, computed columns, for example. So if you want to add, for example, like here we only have, you see the date of birth. If you would like to add a field, like a column with the age, you can also do that. And it will compute automatically, and each time you refresh the data set, that new column gets also updated automatically. So that's super nice, because you get, you can do all sorts of transformations on data, and then the new data that comes in, also transformations get applied.
All right, thanks. And then there's also a question on the sustainability of Comcare. Moreover, for instance, now Comcare is used in a program, and afterwards that program wants to transfer the Comcare and the follow-up of the project to the Ministry of Health. How easy is it to switch users in Comcare, or and it's really a question that adds to the sustainability of it.
Yeah, so users are like any other system. You can define users and decide what they have access to. So one of the main features, one of the main ways you can define what people see as users is you have um, what they call the organizational structure. So for example, here you have like a district, and then you have like the commune, and then in the commune you have like the health center, and in the health center you have villages, and so you have all this hierarchy of zones, let's say, of organizational units, and then you can attach cases and people to different levels of these organizational units. So that then tells you like allows the app to know like what I can see. So for example, if I'm like sort of like attached to the room commune, then I will see all the cases, below me, but I won't see the cases that are like in the other like communes here. So that's one way where you can create new users with the same sort of access rights based on this hierarchy. And then so the user creation gets done here on the web. You can also upload users in bulk with an Excel file, easy. And then in terms of sustainability, I think the question is very large, so I won't be able to answer everything here. But I think the main question is, do you have like identified people who can manage Commcare? Like, so I'm assuming you have people in the field who collect data, and then um, you need someone from the ministry, for example, to take over like user creation, all that stuff. So it's not that hard to train people to do this, and although Comcare has lots of features, so the system can seem quite complex, but the wiki here, the public wiki is extremely extensive. I would say like that's another thing that's special about Comcare is like the level of documentation of the platform is quite high. So you have everything from project planning to app building to how you manage your phone, etc. All that stuff is detailed. I mean, it is described in quite a good level of detail. So that's a very nice resource for anyone looking to transfer, like looking at this. And you might even find presentations of from Dimagi that have already done this a few times, obviously. So you have a lot of boilerplate you can use, a lot of documentation. I think one of the issues with sustainability is cost. So I mentioned cost as one of the let's say limitations of Comcare. So as long as you have someone that can pay for the hosting, then you're good to go. If you don't, then you have to look at transferring these to local server, and as I said, that's also tricky. And that's, I think, one of the big limitations here compared to other tools like DHIS2. But it has been done also in the past. So yeah, it really depends on the resources you have for that handover.
All right, let's close off with a final question.
Yep.
A question that I've heard a few times, and it's around the cost price of the Comcare. Is there a difference in cost when you do it on a program? Is there a difference in cost when you have to scale up? Is this something you can elaborate on a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm going to just open this, but I'm going to open the website here so you can actually see it for yourself. But yeah, so Comcare is if you use the, let's say, the Dimagi hosted version of Comcare. So this is commonly called the SaaS offering. You have like software plans, and then your the amount of users the price you pay gives you, so for different plans you would have a number of users that you can have plus a number of features that you can use. So the more advanced, like the more expensive your plan is, the more features you get access to, and then the more users you can have included in this price. Then if you go like beyond, what's what the biggest plan here, the advanced plan is, then you can talk to the Maggie for like a custom pricing based on the number of users, and I assume you could get like some bulk discounts if you want to. So that's how the pricing works. Then when you pay for one, let's say one account here, when you pay for one subscription, then what you get is this environment, and you get it for let's say here, so we have this is the IT for life domain. So for one domain, right? And you can create as many apps as you want in that domain. So that's great. Which means that you can possibly run like, an unlimited number of programs from this app. So, from this domain. I would say that, as your like number of apps grow, as the type of things you try grows as well, then it might be wise maybe to have a second subscription if you want sort of to compartmentalize the data, because here all the data arrives in the same bucket, in your like here in our RT for Life bucket. So here, like you can see we have like stuff for Nigeria, for like Mali, etc., for Burkina Faso, and all the data sort of like falls in the same bucket. So the way we handle this is that we have like, we, for example, for the case types, we prefix the case types with some, some string that tells us, okay, that's for these countries. So here, for example, like, oh, sorry, wrong link. But like, for example, for this one, we have like, we have like this prefix here, like with the project name. So we know that when you extract the data, we make sure we don't, have like 3 types of child, case. So that's how you handle it. So as your number of apps grow, that can become a little cumbersome. But I mean, here, like we have like, 15 apps or 10 apps, it's still manageable. So not a huge issue once you have your domain. I would say, like, if you want to, honestly, if you want to have Commcare and like use it like and really enjoy, you would need to have like a pro or like an advanced subscription. That's when you actually get the real value out of the project, out of the tool.
All right, thanks, Guillaume. I think that was the last question. If there are any questions that we haven't really answered, our time is unfortunately up, but please put your question in writing and we can get back to you by mail. Mireille, I'll give you the final word.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Charlotte. Can you hear me well?
Yep.
We can hear you well.
Great. I hope you have enjoyed this session. And again, sorry for the issue with the time zone. Please note that we will have another session in French on the same topic next Thursday, the 8th of July, 3 p.m. GMT +2. And also stay tuned for the next session on beneficiary monitoring. We will send you information on that. Thank you again and have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for attending. Bye.